And Greg, mate, Bill Thompson is my name. I attended some of the sessions on de-radicalisation at the university, Unis rang last year. I'm observing what's been going on in the last couple of weeks at the beginning of Ramadan.
Yes.
The bombings in Manchester and Kabul and Baghdad and the like. It's fair to say that this has something to do with Islam. That would be a reasonable comment. Is that?
Oh yeah, we've got a perverted understanding of Islam,
right.
And Ramadan, which is supposed to be a month of contemplation and going out of your way to be thinking peaceful thoughts, is it's flipped on its head. So it's that classic case of religious fundamentalism turned truly toxic.
Indeed. Now, in the wake of September 11th, I was actually in upstate New York on September 11th, and I saw sometime later a documentary, I think it was Panorama, that was talking about the effect of Wahhabism. From your understanding, is Wahhabism a strict interpretation of Islam that can lead to people having a rather extreme view of how the religion works?
Wahhabism, which is a term they don't like to use themselves, is the sort of state religious position of Saudi Arabia.
Indeed.
There are other Wahhabis. They prefer to call themselves Salafis, which sort of means first century purists.
Right.
And most Salafis around the world tend to be quiescent, not involved in politics. Even in Saudi Arabia, there's kind of a deal to support the state. But it does, particularly in the case of Saudi Arabia and some of the other Gulf states, lead to a very judgmental and narrow and pernicious approach to religion, which I think is one of the reasons that people have a negative impression of Islam. It's because what they see is news about Wahhabis, which are, despite their prominence in the news, these are a minority. They have a position of power in Saudi Arabia and some other states, but they aren't mainstream.
Look, I don't claim to be an expert on it, but my understanding is that Saudi Arabia donates a lot of money, millions if not billions of dollars, to establish mosques and madrasas around the world.
It's a kind of clumsy exercise in soft power, and it's meant that Wahhabism has more influence globally than otherwise. It's also subtle. It comes through controlling the Arabic press publishing industry, so that the views that are critical find it hard to be published in Arabic. So it's a concerning and pernicious influence, which I think most people...
I'm pleased to hear that we concur on that view. And I was somewhat alarmed that President Trump was recently in Saudi Arabia signing massive military hardware contracts. And I appreciate it's good for the American economy. And in an environment where the Saudis see the Iranians as their adversaries, and the Iranians may or may not be on the march for nuclear weapons, I can appreciate the concerns that they have. But the result is that the world is a less safe place because of these ideological and religious differences across the Islamic world.
Well, I think one of the key issues is this power struggle between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And we saw with the Trump visit a demonising of Iran, and there's reason to be critical of Iran, but it was a simplistic take. The other reason to be concerned in the sort of immediate context is Saudi Arabia is involved in military operations in Yemen.
Yes.
Now, leaving aside the fact that they have some grounds for being there,
yeah, I know how.
It's been a
bit ham-fisted.
It's been handled in not just an inept way that's sort of a comic tragic to watch, but truly tragic in terms of the impact on the lives of Yemeni people.
Of course.
The lack of food, lack of medical care. It's a horrible situation, and the Trump visit might have been a chance to say, look, we'll work with you, but we've got to have a greater accountability in making sure the people of Yemen are not victims of...
Just as a final comment, President Obama started off his term getting the Nobel Peace Prize and then going to Cairo and other places to reach out to the Islamic world. As an observer of world events, I don't think the world is safer now than it was at the commencement of Barack Obama's term. Do you think that's a fair comment or otherwise?
Yeah, I think the important time frame goes back well before the Obama presidency. So
indeed.
The Cold War situation, of course, coming on the back of the end of colonialism, was particularly hard on the Muslim world, particularly the Middle East and North Africa. And then the transition out of the Cold War, where the West had backed often authoritarian figures like Mubarak in Egypt, meant that even decades later we're still dealing with the residue of that. That played out in the Arab Spring and the return of the Egyptian military. Now Obama, was prematurely given a peace prize and was in a difficult position to accept or to reject it, which wasn't of his making. Yeah. But a lot of his presidency was working through the consequences of that. But an additional, structural factor was the 9/11 attack and the response. And the response in terms of invading Iraq in 2003, bringing about regime change, and then contributing to regime change in Libya has been disastrous. And Obama was critical of that at the time when he was a senator. Oddly enough, history at the moment and perhaps in the future will be critical of him for not being more proactive during his presidency in the region. But it's now quite a mess.
Mate, I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Very.